Hymns House, episode 4. I'm Jonathan Stern, and as always, I'm here with Lewis Stevens and Dr. H. Today, I want to do a deep dive into Hims product offerings. Dr. H, could you kick us off with a walkthrough of Hims and Hers portfolio?
Sure. So this is the Hims website here, hims.com. And as Lewis mentioned in the last episode, very clean, modern look, very welcoming, makes you feel comfortable. But they kind of break down their product offerings really easily visible right in this front page here. I mentioned also earlier they started out with erectile dysfunction and hair loss. These two here are still kind of the main topics here, but they've since branched off into mental health, have longer sex, so premature ejaculation, dermatology, anti-aging, and healthy skin products. And what people are excited about is the weight management category here. So these would be the main pillars of the Hims side of it.
So you'd say 5 pillars: sexual health, mental health, hair loss, weight loss, skincare. Which products are most popular in your experience?
I feel like the categories that it started out with remain popular. So ED and hair loss. These are conditions that just aren't going to go away generally. Hair loss, male pattern hair loss is a lifelong condition that you'll deal with. Sexual treatments remain still a bit of a taboo, which makes it hard for men or patients to talk to their primary care doctor. Sometimes it might be a women physician and they're not comfortable doing it. They might just have a better experience doing this online and having someone who's not judging you and stereotyping you. Those remain very popular. The weight management category has really taken off on both the Hims and Hers side. As Lewis mentioned, a great launch for the weight management product, 100 million. Is that right?
100 million in sales, yes, in about 6 months.
Yeah. The other categories remain important, but probably not as popular as the first three.
And then looking into the future, what would you say is most requested that they don't yet offer?
They actually have in the investor deck, and you brought this up in the Discord channel, they pointed it out very clearly. For sexual health, they're looking at some point maybe testosterone treatment for men and menopause for women. Those would be the next very logical steps that they should probably branch out into.
Are there any other obvious next products that Hims might roll out, or are we sort of laser focused on testosterone, menopause? And
that's what I would do if I were running Hims, but I'm not running Hims. I can try to pull up that site map, actually.
Yeah, let's pull up that graphic.
Yeah, I'll share this one.
All right, so walk us through this diagram, Dr. H.
So this was was it the investors slide deck, or what was this from?
Yep, this was in one of their investor slide decks.
So very prominently, first category, sexual health, testosterone, menopause. As a physician, I think that's going to be a big hit. I've seen a lot of people on the Hims platform and outside the Hims platform requesting, hey, do you guys do testosterone treatments? I can't get my primary care doctor to even test me for it. They want to refer me to a urologist. It takes me 4 months to get into a urologist. I've seen people who have symptoms of low testosterone, but their actual testosterone might not be on the dot on the low side, and they fall through the cracks because the provider might not want to do this for them. So I think there's a big market for this area here. Menopause is a very poorly understood condition that affects every single woman on the face of the earth. It's hard to get menopausal care. People just kind of get squirrely when it comes to dealing with hormones and stuff. So there's a big market for menopause. So those are the two very obvious areas that can be branched out. Looking over here, diabetes in the weight loss management section, that really goes along with the chronic care model that Lewis and I have talked about. If Hims can pull it off successfully, there's a big market. It ties in very well with weight management. Obviously, we're using diabetes medicines for the GLP-1s. Even the oral medicines, metformin is a diabetes medication. So it naturally makes sense to address diabetes. Mental health, PTSD, insomnia, substance abuse, smaller market, but if they can pull it off and provide a great service that's convenient, that can be a pretty popular service. I'd imagine they may want to partner with not just medicine treatments, but also psychologists for counseling or self-guided counseling apps and things like that using technology. I think that can be ways to incorporate medical care that's not just providing a medicine. So I think they can really use their software development and tech teams to really provide some good care in mental health. And dermatology, I'm not as familiar with the dermatology side on HIMSS. I think they may already be treating some of these conditions, rosacea and eczema. What might be interesting for dermatology is once they finalize their compounding pharmacy, it'll be easier for them to develop custom compounded dermatology treatments. And that's really big in the dermatology world, is using a combination of different medicines to apply into one cream or topical. It makes it easier for the patient from a usage standpoint, instead of trying to do 3 medicines to handle really difficult to handle rosacea. They may then have the special compound where it's 3 medicines in one, and you just apply it once or twice a day instead of 3 medicines twice a day. So I can see where that would be a big important area for dermatology.
One of the unique things about HIMSS is that they offer what they call personalized treatments. What is that? What does that mean? And how is this different from what telehealth companies have offered in the past?
One thing that Andrew Dudo mentioned on his Twitter account, he is really excited about this personalized medicine. He's mentioned it multiple times in many different tweets. I think that's what he really wants to drive Hims and Hers brand, is doing this personalized medicine. And the examples he gave are spot on. Side effect management. Some examples I can give you. The biggest thing is the GLP-1s. Ozempic is probably one of the ones that are most well known. If you look at Ozempic's dosage schedule, there's a dosage that's medium high, 1 milligram. The next level up is 2 milligrams. And that's it for the medium and high dosage. Well, someone might have a side effect, 2 milligrams, but the 1 milligram dosage wasn't effective enough. There's a pretty big gap between 1 milligrams and 2 milligrams. So that's where a role could be for like a compounding medicine, where they use a personalized compounded medicines, semaglutide. You can do it at 1.25, 1.5, 1.7 milligrams, where you have a better effect than 1 milligram, but less side effects than 2 milligrams. So side effect management is a big thing that's important. And I think Andrew Dudum even alluded to the fact that even if these GLP-1 brand name shortages were to go away, there exists a world where they can continue to do these compounded medicines because of this specific situation, managing specific side effects due to the very concrete dosages that the brandings might have. Other areas where personalized medicines can be really helpful would be increasing adherence to medical treatments. The example I gave you about dermatology, some conditions might need 2 or 3 medicines and they're applied 2 times a day. So you're doing a medicine 6 times in a day, basically. And people, it's hard to do that when you're busy. You got kids, you're at your job, rushing to go to work. Who has time to remember to do something 6 times a day, possibly? So if you could figure out a way to combine 2 medicines in one, 3 medicines in one, and you're only doing it once or twice a day, the patient adherence really goes, compliance really goes much higher, and you get better outcomes. All of a sudden, what may have taken 6 months to see a difference in the rosacea because you're forgetting 3 times out of the week, all of a sudden, hey, you're getting better outcomes in half that time because you're remembering to take it every day. Same thing with what they did with combining for male pattern hair loss, finasteride and minoxidil. Minoxidil or Rogaine used to be a spray, and then you do it twice a day, and then you have to take a pill too. But if you have a combination where you combine it into one treatment, all of a sudden it makes it a lot easier for the guy to be like, oh, I just got to do my one hair treatment for the day. And it's something that they can adhere to on a day-to-day basis, a lot easier. And you see results at a sooner timeline than if you forget once in a while. So adherence is another important thing. And then the multi-condition treatment is another thing that was mentioned. And I really was impressed, to give one example, of the heart health medicine treatments that HIMSS rolled out not too long ago. And in this case, they combined the medicine for ED with a heart medicine, basically a statin. And that was something I never really would thought of doing myself, but it totally made sense because of new studies and research from cardiologists that have been finding that people with heart issues or at risk of heart disease, if they even take this statin medication, 2 or 3 times a week, you can lower your risk for heart disease and stroke significantly compared to if you didn't take the medicine. And hey, if you have a guy who has sex 2 times a week, and then they're taking this medicine and they're getting this additional benefit of lowering your risk of heart disease and heart attack, that's just something that can be really appealing to people because all of a sudden you're addressing more than one issue at one time and you're making it easier for them to address these issues.
Is Hims the first company that's done something like this? Have these ideas been bouncing around, floating around in the industry for a while? And what sort of moat do these personalized treatments and ability to compound offer?
Oh no, compounding medicines has been around for a long time. It just was more limited to specialists who knew what they're doing and how to compound what ingredients, what medicines, and what formulations, what percentages. Then they would have to send the prescription to a special compounding pharmacy that is not local in town.
Sorry to jump in. Who would typically initiate that? The primary care physician?
Physician who has knowledge and expertise in prescribing and using compounded medicines would initiate this recommendation. The most classic example is a dermatologist. So compounded medicines for dermatology in the dermatology world have been around a long time, and they'll make a recommendation of a specific dosage strength of a steroid cream, combine it with another something, and then they have this relationship and know of a pharmacy that can do this for you and just get it prescribed. So that's the very classic example. Is it's been around. Dermatologists have used it for a while. It's just it hasn't been as easily accessible. It hasn't been as well known outside of the world of the very few physicians who are comfortable doing this. So now Hims is all of a sudden just really bringing attention to it and saying, hey, we're going to be experts in this. We're going to train all our doctors to know how to custom prescribe specific formulations that are going to be right for you. So they're really the ones that are bringing attention to it and bringing it to the forefront and saying, we're going to make it easier for you to do this.
Lewis, are you able to speculate on what sort of moat or stickiness these offerings give the company?
It is definitely an exercise in speculation because, you think about a brand like Kleenex. Kleenex is the ultimate commodity. You and I could create a Kleenex rival. Literally in 30 minutes, we could figure it out online and have the product built and selected and have it being shipped from China. Maybe 30 minutes is ambitious, but face tissues, that is the ultimate commodity product, but notwithstanding, Kleenex has been a durable cash flow producing brand for decades in the United States. And so I think, and you think about primary care physicians in general, there's a commoditization element to the care you receive. At the end of the day, there's a limited set of interventions and they're all sort of the same. Maybe there's some rogue doctors out there just using homeopathic remedies and witchcraft. I don't know, but there's really a set of accepted interventions at any given time that are the consensus within the medical community, and it's all ordained by the FDA. Over time, what moats could Hims develop? I think number one, the brand moat would be the most obvious, and I think there's already a brand moat forming. Another vantage point we could look at it through is the idea that some industries consolidate and ultimately there's game theory dictating economics and everybody in the industry generates profits. I think cereal is an interesting industry. I'm almost positive it's the case that all of these cereal brands, though they're operating in something like a perfectly competitive market, are profitable. And there's 100 different cereal brands. But another market could end up having impaired unit economics. My belief is that over time, the competitors to Hims will basically disappear because the vertical integration business model is really challenging. I think there will be some network effects associated with the brand at scale if they get 10, 20, 30 million members globally. I think there will be network effects there. But at the end of the day, what creates a brand moat or a moat in general? I would say the foremost factor for any moat is consistently delivering a high quality product to consumers for decades at a time. And that's not easy. Humans are fallible. We get sick, relationships fray, founders get into arguments. There's a lot of variables that go into successfully building a business. And having that business consistently deliver a high quality and trusted product year in, year out for decades at a time. And you think about Kleenex or you think about Starbucks, these are the most commoditized businesses conceivable. Johnny, Dr. H, and I could create a rival to Starbucks in an hour. We just have to go down to the store, get a pot of Folgers coffee grounds, or what? I don't brew. I drink energy drinks. I don't brew coffee.
Folgers is a lower status brand, but that's okay. That's exactly right. They serve the grounds. We're going to get a big bucket of Folgers and we're going to go where, Lewis?
And we're going to brew a pot and we're going to immediately start taking market share from, selling cups of coffee at the park. So like that's the ultimate commodity product. And yet it's $100 billion business. And it's that because it's delivered a consistent product year in, year out. It sounds, I think high level operators who are, especially in Silicon Valley, San Francisco, will be like, this is obvious stuff. But look at Asana. I mean, management has run the business into the ground. And then compare that to Monday, right? Ultimately, these are software platforms that are not that hard to create, and they're getting easier by the day to create. And the scale of difficulty of products, like if SpaceX rockets is the most difficult and Dutch Bros coffee is the easiest, project management software is probably closer to the coffee than it is to the rocket. Feel free to debate me on this. But my point is, it's not complicated software. And one business has totally imploded. It's being run into the ground. It's still in business, but the unit economics are horrendous. It's not growing. It's growing at like 10% in an infinite market globally.
Could we tie it back to Hims?
Yeah, so Hims is ultimately selling, it could be seen as a commodity product, though I think we've already talked about how differentiated it can be with the Livongo situation in Teladoc. But my point is, it's not a foregone conclusion that all competitors will be able to execute a simple business model. Asana can't execute its simple business model. And its founder is the co-founder of Facebook. He's very smart. The only company right now on earth, Smartsheet just sold itself. It's a competitor to Monday and Asana. So there's only one company that's successfully executing in the public markets a super simple project management business. I think people talk about Hims as if the product can be commoditized. I think it can't. But the business model is much harder to execute than Kleenex, that's for sure. I would argue it's probably the same level of difficulty to execute as project management software. And we see there's huge differentiation in that industry. And the last thing I'll say, Johnny, is Teladoc has also resoundingly demonstrated that this business model is hard to execute. The products, yes, they can be commoditized as to what should be delivered to humans, and that will evolve over time. But I think that's a point of differentiation. What companies can evolve as medicine evolves. I just think there's a ton of differentiation that can occur in merely the execution of the business model, products aside.
I want to talk about brand moat real quickly. You mentioned that initially with Kleenex and whatnot. But with Hims, I've been seeing that brand identity already coming to the patients, and they would come to me and say, hey, how is Hims different than Viagra? How is it better? I heard it's better. And then that really struck me because like, well, this medicine that you're requesting is sildenafil. It's generic Viagra. So I would say, well, this Hims specific treatment is the generic version of Viagra. So it would be basically the same. There's no difference. Although Hims may offer or does offer this other special compounded ED medicine in the Chewment where it combines sildenafil and tadalafil. And maybe that's what you might be looking for. You get the effects of maybe both medicines. So people were already coming and saying, and using Hims in a way that you would use Kleenex, like Hims. I heard Hims good. So I think that brand identity is already starting to really become pretty powerful, I think. And then I think Hims had that commercial in the last Super Bowl. Was it Super Bowl? The guys, they're getting ready for a wedding. And then they're basically saying, oh, wait, I got to get my Hims treatment in or whatever. I'm taking Hims for that. and they're using the word Hims as you and I would use Kleenex. It's not Kleenex, it's tissue paper. But the way they're just really marketing this brand identity, it's kind of very fascinating to see what they're trying to go with it.
And so to circle back to the personalized treatments, the compounding, is this a case for Stickiness or a company Moat? It sounds like the answer is maybe, but that it's one ingredient as part of a larger picture, which incorporates a brand moat and vertical integration and masterful execution. Maybe the best execution that the healthcare industry has ever seen or close to it. And that the personalized treatment is part of what makes this product so compelling. Another company could start up that offers personalized treatments or compounding, but that coupled with everything else that I just mentioned, you do get a pretty compelling company moat.
I think that's exactly it. We've talked about this before. Anyone can come and offer medicines like this. It's not trademarked, it's not patented. But as you mentioned, when you combine the execution, the planning, the marketing, the logistics, the professional doctors, I think it's the combination of all of that.
What I would add to your introduction there, Johnny, was that it's the most masterful execution in the digital healthcare space, undoubtedly. Like that's indisputable. In the healthcare industry, I mean, I don't know, United Health.
We have overstated healthcare industry in that we have some companies pushing up on trillion-dollar valuations. You're right.
I mean, there's some American business titans that were chopping wood in the 20th century.
Lilly or United Healthcare. There are some very impressive companies.
But I think I like the conversation we're having because I'm sure the listeners are deriving their own insights. They're arriving at their own conclusions through the constellation of ideas we're sharing as a team here. I think it's interesting. I think the way that you described it is the accurate way. There's all of these different elements, but who can bring this to market in a consistent way for years and years at a time? Like even what we're doing today with Hims House, I would argue that this is the most differentiated Hims research on the internet. I actually know, I know it is. You're not going to find this anywhere else. But the expert call aspect with Dr. H, the equity analyst aspect, the hosting and vision for it with you, Johnny, you're not going to find any of this stuff anywhere else. But just even this, what's the moat here? I do think that our perspectives are differentiated, but I think other people could do it. But at the end of the day, the moat is executing it. I think there's a lot to be said for execution, and this is relatively straightforward. To orchestrate the network effects between the patient's data, and the healthcare providers, you don't need the pharmacies because they're vertically integrating it. But to orchestrate that network effect is really challenging. To store, preserve, manipulate, interpret all of the medical data, that's really challenging. To create an attractive UI UX, I mean, that makes or breaks businesses. We could go down the whole value chain and think about the fact that it takes consistent, substantial execution to do this. I think there's going to be some pretenders. I mean, we're already seeing it with Roman. $7 billion valuation in February of 2022, but they try to launch Rory and they can't do it.
7 billion, Lewis?
Yes, which I've been waving my hands in the air like, hey guys, like, when Hims is trading at like 1.5 billion in 2023 or whatever insane, I think it was lower.
Lower. Well, given where it is now, it must have been lower. So I think it's yeah.
Roman, who couldn't put a successful female brand into market, was 7 billion back in February of 2022. And I mean, that illustrates everything we're saying. It's such a commodity, and they can't field a female brand. It's a commodity. So why is anybody failing? Why is the number one player that Roe and Hims, Roe was a bigger player, I believe, at some point. It had more market share at some point. Now Hims has really run away with it. And I would argue that being under the spotlight of the public markets has contributed to that. But why can't the number one player launch a female brand?
Yeah, they went through different identities too. They were initially Get Roman, and then there's Rory, and now they're short form to Row. So I don't know. They're just
I was
they're
going to
trying
say,
to.
is it Roe or Roman? I've heard
They
of.
started out as Roman, but they go by Row now.
Okay. Since this is a product episode, could we get into why hers has been so successful and yet Rory is falling flat on its face? What's going on there? Is it just execution, or does Hims know something that Roe doesn't? And, Dudum is saying that hers may eventually eclipse Hims. How has Hims been able to do it?
For the hers side of the business, they offer many similar treatments for conditions as Hims. You have weight loss, mental health, hair loss too, as the top three most prominent ones on their website. They also offer skin. They also have I think they have a pretty robust supplements and over-the-counter sections too. So things that you don't need a prescription for. So you will be able to purchase this directly from the website without doing a doctor's consult. You might see some of these products available, but specifically then for some of the treatments, they would offer more women's specific treatment. Women's hair loss is treated a little bit differently than men's hair loss. So their medicines that they use are much more specific to women. Also, the comfort level of seeking treatment from doctors and clinicians who are basically experts at this. If you see your primary doctor and you're a woman and you have hair loss, I can guarantee you that it's not one of the favorite conditions to treat as a primary care doctor because it's hard. It's hard to manage women's hair loss because there's so many different ways you could treat it. And a lot of times as a primary care doctor, you might just make a referral to a hair specialist or dermatologist because it's easier for your patient to see that specialist rather than you to try to figure out all the different ways you can treat women's hair loss. So when this platform is specifically geared towards women and you're saying, hey, we know how to treat female pattern hair loss. We have doctors who do it and do it well. I think that's a big thing that's very appealing to women is, hey, I feel comfortable doing this. And I wasn't really heard or seen when I went and tried to bring up this concern with my primary doctor. I was recommended to go see someone else.
Dr. H, do you prescribe hers medications, or were you just in the Hims network?
When I was with Hims, I did a little bit of hers. I did some birth control, women's health, that type of stuff. I didn't do as much of the hair loss and mental health. At that time, it was in more of its early stages, so they didn't have as much demand as it is now. So I was mostly focusing on the areas that they needed help with.
And Lewis, any final notes on Rory or hers and why hers has been so much more successful?
Well, it certainly has been so much more successful. I definitely have thoughts on it. I guess number one, in 2021, Andrew Dudum stated that they would launch the hers platform. That alone was a major milestone for the thesis. It wasn't a foregone conclusion that they would launch a female brand that would then grow into to a point where it would contribute meaningfully. The execution of the hers brand wasn't a foregone conclusion, and Andrew Dudum said we're going to launch hers, and nobody knew if they would actually do it, and then nobody knew if it would be a meaningful contributor to the thesis, to the overall business and the thesis. And ultimately, what has been the net result from his promise in early 2021? The net result is that hers is set to eclipse Hims in scale, and it is one of the most successful healthcare apps in America right now. Healthcare apps, period. And so I think that just sheds light on the execution acumen of this company, which is phenomenal. And what further highlights or galvanizes that perspective is the idea that Roe, the company formerly known as Roman, I believe it was the larger company. It was at greater scale than Hims in 2020, 2021. Hims was actually getting beaten because I remember Roman being very popular in pop culture. It had a bunch of influencers marketing its products. I don't think that even occurs today. There's not much marketing that I've come across other than ads.
You see ads on whether it's, social media or even TV. They've got this, red backgrounds for football games and so forth.
For Roe.
For Roe, it too is a trendy brand, and they have their color, and they still advertise.
So you're on like the Golf Channel and things like that too.
Yeah, I certainly watch the Golf Channel, so maybe that's
Is that where you saw it?
That could be. They may not be working with influencers as much as they used to, though. I don't know.
My point about the influencer thing was that I think Roman was at bigger scale because it was doing a better job with influencer marketing. It was doing a better job marketing in general. I think Hims has stolen the lead in terms of marketing execution and just execution broadly. But I sure to highlight because today Roman it's not an afterthought, but if we're to believe the Bloomberg data, then it is in some sense now becoming an afterthought with Hims just simply dominating the market, statistically speaking. It was more a part of the collective consciousness. People don't talk about Roe as much today. And if they did, they would just be saying, hey, Roe was a $7 billion business in February 2022 in the private markets. And today it has less market share than Hims. So where does that leave Hims? But my point about all of it is that Roe was a legitimate big contender and arguably bigger than Hims. And it attempted to field a female brand, because they're competing neck and neck, Hims versus Roman, Hims versus Roman. The next step is who can get this female brand out. And a female digital healthcare brand is like really attractive because women tend to spend more freely than men, and they're going to spend on their health and beauty to a vastly greater extent. The natural state of man is like, is for most men probably in health disrepair. And, females are going to naturally care about health and beauty and makeup and all of the stuff to a far greater degree than men. And so there's this big prize. Who's going to get the compelling female healthcare brand that's attractive, that's cool and sleek, and is going to win this pot of gold for fielding this attractive digital healthcare brand? And it's a commodity business. Anybody can do it. Anybody can do it. All right. So the net result is Roman, the company beating Hims, failed in fielding Rory. Rory is not a brand anymore. But you can go Google Rory and Roman, and you'll see that they've tried to field it. They gave it a go, but they failed. And so now Hims has this wonderful Hers health brand, and now it's set to eclipse Hims, and it makes sense. Women spend on beauty and health, and if you give them a compelling digital healthcare brand, they're going to spend their money with it.
I think men, it takes a lot for a guy to have the insight and think, man, I got this issue. I got to take care of it. We're going to procrastinate. We're going to deny it. We're going to, there's just no inertia to make a change in your health. I think it's a lot easier for women to be like, you know what, I'm going to take this chance on this digital health platform. I think just psychologically, I really feel like there's a difference between the sexes and how we go about thinking about our own health. So I think, yeah, the women's health section, I would not be surprised if it surpasses the men's side by a vast amount.
I really like how you described it, Dr. H. The idea of taking a chance on one of these platforms. It's so familiar to us that we start to lose sight, and maybe Dr. H does not lose sight of it because he's dealing with it day to day, but people are totally ignorant to digital healthcare and semaglutide and finasteride. I mean, so many men have no idea what finasteride and minoxidil can do for them. They have no concept. There's so many men that have no concept of the fact that they could restore their hair.
I'll tell you, on my GLP-1 visits, it's very, very, very favored towards women in terms of how many women will do a consult with me versus men. For every 6 to 7 women, I see one guy, one male. And that's the difference in obesity rates is not that different, but these are the people who are just showing up. Women vastly show up more for these visits and requests for help than men.
Fascinating.
People are taking chances on these platforms. So the company that can achieve a brand moat and who can execute consistently, that little line from Dr. H, taking a chance. People struggle to make a decision on paper towels. The element of taking a chance on a healthcare platform, we're losing sight of the fact that people have absolutely no idea what's going on with finasteride and minoxidil. The bears are approaching this from this savant analytical position where they're like, it's a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor. Like, I can buy this in bulk from this website and I can source it in this way. It's like most people aren't like that. They're going to go to a trusted source. They have better things to do with their time. People have better things to do with their time than to be analyzing 5-alpha reductase inhibitor. They'd rather go to the doctor and ask, what do I do? And they're going to take a chance on the medical expertise of the doctor. And if Hims can be a consistent source of medical expertise over time, then that's the brand Moat. And I just think the taking a chance line is so important to the thesis.
I want to leave it there. This has been an excellent product overview. I think we've shed light on a few other things too throughout this episode. So thank you for all of that. This has been Hims House, episode 4. We will be back soon. See you next time. Thank you.